The young and the restless spoilers. Mariah had always carried her fears quietly, tucked beneath layers of forced confidence and the carefully constructed composure she spent years trying to maintain. But ever since the shadow of Matt Clark returned to haunt Genoa City, that fragile sense of stability had begun to splinter. The mere mention of his name brought back memories she had tried desperately to bury, memories of manipulation, of being used as a pawn, of losing her sense of self in the hands of a man who thrived on exploiting weakness. Yet none of those scars compared to the terror she felt now as Noah's life became entangled with Matt's plans. Every instinct in her body screamed that danger was approaching, the kind of danger that didn't strike loudly or openly, but crept in slowly, tightening around the people she loved until escape was no longer possible. She felt Noah slipping into Matt's crosshairs, and she couldn't shake the certainty that this time, the consequences would be irreversible. As the anxiety grew heavier, Mariah found herself unable to confide in Sharon or Nick. She knew what they would say, how they would react, how they would try to protect Noah by confronting Matt directly. But she also knew such a confrontation would be catastrophic. Matt thrived in chaos. He used overt conflict as camouflage for his real strategy, slow psychological tightening of his grip until his target was too cornered to fight back. If Sharon or Nick walked into this blindly, Matt would not hesitate to strike at Noah from an angle they didn't see coming. So Mariah decided to protect her brother the only way she believed she could, alone, in silence, without the interference of the family members who might unintentionally escalate the threat. This secrecy became her armor, even as it weighed on her like a stone. Taking matters into her own hands, Mariah began seeking Matt out, moving through back channels and locations where she knew he might linger, waiting for an opportunity to confront him before he could tighten his hold on Noah. Every step toward him felt like stepping into her own past trauma, forcing her to revisit the version of herself he once manipulated so easily. She hated that she still felt small in his presence, hated the way her body tensed at the thought of hearing his voice again. But her determination overpowered her fear. Noah needed her, even if he didn't know it. He was kind, vulnerable in ways he didn't realize, and this made him the perfect target for someone like Matt, a man who fed on vulnerability the way others fed on air. When Mariah finally stood face to face with him, she attempted to mask the tremor in her voice with controlled determination, but Matt recognized her fear instantly. His smile, thin and predatory, revealed that he had anticipated this moment far more thoroughly than she had. He listened with unsettling calm as she tried to bargain with him, tried to appeal to whatever sense of human decency might remain buried beneath his cruelty. She asked for clarity, for reassurance, for some sense of what he planned to do to Noah. Her questions revealed her desperation, and Matt, perceptive as ever, used it against her. Instead of offering answers, he poked at her insecurities, her memories, her past mistakes. He reminded her how easily she had once been manipulated, how deeply the scars of their previous entanglement still burned beneath her skin. Mariah felt herself unravel as Matt shifted the conversation away from Noah and toward her weaknesses, her fear of not being enough, her terror of failing the people she loved. He knew exactly which strings to pull. He could see the protective instinct radiating from her, fierce yet fragile, and he twisted it into a weapon he could wield. As he circled her psychologically, reminding her of the ways she once succumbed to pressure and emotional vulnerability, she realized with horror that he was not just threatening Noah, he was threatening to pull her back into a version of herself she had spent years trying to escape. Matt's power had never been physical strength, it was psychological dissection, the cold, slow peeling away of someone's defenses until they were bare and exposed, willing to do anything to shield the ones they loved. Then Matt delivered the ultimatum that shattered the remaining remnants of Mariah's composure. With a chilling clarity, he offered her a deal: become his ally, his inside informant, his quiet accomplice operating within the Newman Sharon orbit, and Noah would remain untouched. Refuse, and the consequences would fall not just on Noah, but on the entire family. It wasn't a threat delivered with drama or violence, it was calm, methodical, precise, which made it far more terrifying. Mariah understood instantly that this was not a negotiation, it was a trap designed exactly for someone like her. Matt knew she loved her family too deeply to risk their safety. He knew she would choose sacrifice over confrontation, secrecy over risk, guilt over loss. He had shaped the terms perfectly, with the kind of psychological accuracy that made her feel as though he had been studying her from the shadows long before she ever sought him out. The war inside Mariah's mind escalated to a level she could barely contain. She wanted to run, to scream, to warn Noah, Sharon, Nick and Yon who would listen. But as she imagined Noah caught in Matt's crossfire, she felt her resistance collapse. Every scenario she envisioned ended with Noah suffering, with the fragile piece of their lives shattering. She felt backed into a corner, suffocated by the pressure of a choice that wasn't a choice at all. Her love for Noah left her defenseless, and Matt knew it. He leaned into that vulnerability, waiting with eerie calm for her to realize there was no alternative she could live with. When she finally nodded, barely able to speak, Matt smiled with satisfaction, sealing a pact that felt like a slow-burning noose tightening around her neck. From that moment on, Mariah stepped into the role of unwilling collaborator, moving silently between her family and Matt with the weight of her decision crushing every breath she took. She concealed her terror beneath a veneer of forced normalcy, pretending everything was fine even as her thoughts spiraled into panic. Each lie she told Sharon, each evasive answer she gave Nick, each moment she avoided Noah's eyes added another layer of guilt to her growing burden. She felt herself drifting away from the people she loved, not because she wanted to, but because she feared that any closeness would expose the truth. Her heart broke a little more every time Noah smiled at her, unaware of the darkness she had stepped into on his behalf. As days passed, Mariah began to see the unintended consequences of her actions. By keeping secrets and allowing Matt's influence to seep quietly into her orbit, she inadvertently weakened the family's awareness, leaving them exposed in ways they had never been before. Every piece of information she withheld became a weapon Matt could use. Every time she failed to alert her family about subtle shifts or looming threats, she opened another door for him to infiltrate their lives. She thought she was protecting Noah, but the deeper she sank into Matt's psychological grasp, the more she realized she was creating blind spots that could fracture everything she was trying to preserve. Her attempt to shield her brother had unwittingly built a path for far greater danger, and with every passing day, she felt the dread mounting, tightening, promising that the real consequences of her choice were only beginning to emerge. Mariah's world became a labyrinth of lies, guilt, fear, and distorted loyalty, where every step forward risked collapsing the delicate balance she was trying desperately to maintain. She knew she had made a deal with a man who had no sense of mercy, no conscience, no boundary he wouldn't cross. And as she watched her family move through their days unaware of the storm forming around them, she realized with painful clarity that her desperate bid to save Noah might ultimately be the very thing that put them all in greater peril. The air in the living room of Sharon's cottage was stale, recycled, and thick with a suffocating tension that had nothing to do with the humidity of Genoa City. Mariah Copeland stood by the mantel, her fingers tracing the cold porcelain of a framed photograph, smiling, golden, perfect. Behind her, the frantic energy of her mother and Nick Newman consumed the space. They were a whirlwind of hushed phone calls, map shuffling, and desperate coordination, their voices tight with the singular, blinding panic of parents whose favorite child was in peril. "Victor has the jet fueled," Nick was saying, his phone pressed so hard against his ear his knuckles were white. "We can be in Los Angeles in 4 hours. If Matt Clark has him. God, Sharon, if he has him." Sharon paced the length of the rug, her hands trembling as she clasped them over her mouth. "He's hurt, Nick. I can feel it. Noah is. He's terrified. We have to go now. We can't wait for the police to clear the scene. We have to get our son. Our son." The words hung in the air, heavy and exclusive. Mariah turned slightly, waiting for a glance, a nod, an instruction that acknowledged her presence in the room. She had offered to run the logistics, to call the contacts at the GCPD, to fly out with them. But she had been met with a distracted wave of a hand. "Stay here, Mariah. We need you to watch the house. We need you to keep things stable." Stable. That was the code word for out of the way. "I can call Tessa," Mariah said, her voice sounding small in the cavernous room. "She can come over and watch the place so I can go with you. I know how Matt thinks I can." "Not now, Mariah," Sharon snapped, not out of malice, but out of a sheer, blinding focus that hurt worse than cruelty. She didn't even look up from the tablet where she was tracking a GPS signal that had gone dead hours ago. "This is dangerous. Matt Clark is a monster. I can't worry about you two. I need to focus on Noah. Nick grabbed his jacket, his eyes already on the door. Your mom's right. Just hold down the fort. We'll call you when we have him. The door slammed shut, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. The sound of the engine roaring to life outside faded into the distance, and Mariah was left standing alone in the center of the room, the silence pressing against her eardrums. The familiar, cold pit of abandonment opened up in her stomach, a sensation she had thought she'd buried years ago under layers of therapy and acceptance. But here it was, raw and bleeding. When the chips were down, when the world was burning, she was just the observer. Noah was the protagonist. Outside, through the slats of the blinds that Mariah had neglected to close, a pair of eyes watched from the shadows of the overgrown hydrangeas. Matt Clark, the man the entire Newman dynasty was currently hunting across state lines, was not in Los Angeles. He was here. He had slipped back into Genoa City like a ghost, shedding the skin of Mitch Bacall and embracing the darkness that had birthed him. He adjusted the collar of his coat, a smirk tugging at the corner of his scarred lip. He had expected to find a fortress, a united front of Newman's strength. Instead, he saw a fractured picture. He saw the frantic parents speeding off to chase a decoy he had planted 300 miles away. And he saw the girl's other daughter, the afterthought, staying alone in the living room, her posture screaming a silent scream of rejection. Perfect, Matt whispered, the word dissolving into the night air. He had done his homework. He knew the history of Cassie, the twin sister whose ghost Mariah had been forced to live in the shadow of. He knew about the cult, the identity crises, the desperate clawing for a place at the table. He saw a wound that had never truly healed, and he knew exactly how to solve it. Mariah jumped when the knock came at the back door. It was soft, rhythmic, almost polite. She wiped her eyes, steeling herself, expecting a neighbor or perhaps Faith returning early. She unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open, ready to offer a rehearsed excuse about her parents being out of town. The man standing there was older than the pictures she had seen in the police files, his face lined with a rugged, dangerous weariness, but the eyes were unmistakable. Cold, calculating, and terrifyingly calm. Matt, she breathed, stumbling back, her hand reaching for the phone on the counter. I wouldn't, Matt said. His voice wasn't a threat, it was a smooth, reasonable suggestion. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, locking it with a casual flick of his wrist. If you call them, they'll just tell you to stay put. They'll tell you to let the adults handle it. Isn't that what they always say? Mariah froze, her fingers hovering inches from the screen. Get out. I'll scream. You'll what? Matt walked past her, moving into the kitchen with the familiarity of an old friend. He picked up an apple from the bowl, tossing it lightly. You'll scream for the mother who just left you here to dust the furniture while she saves her real child. You'll call the father who looks at you and still sees the daughter who died, not the one who survived. Mariah's breath hitched. You don't know anything about my family. I know everything about your family, Mariah. I've been watching them since before you were born. I know how they operate. Matt turned, his expression shifting from mockery to a fox sympathy that was chillingly effective. I saw them leave. I saw the look on Sharon's face. It wasn't fear for her children. It was fear for Noah. Just Noah. Always Noah. He reached into his jacket pocket. Mariah flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a folded sheaf of papers and tossed them onto the kitchen island. They slid across the granite, coming to a stop in front of her. Take a look, he urged softly. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came to show you why you're hurting. Mariah looked down. It was a printout of a trust fund allocation from Newman Enterprises, dated 3 months ago. The numbers were staggering. Noah's column was a fortress of assets, voting rights, and property deeds. Her column in Faith's was a fraction. A comfortable fraction, but a fraction nonetheless. But it was the mail attached to the document that stopped her heart. It was from Nick to Victor. Dad, we need to secure the majority for Noah. He's the future. Mariah and Faith are doing their own things, but Noah is the legacy. We have to protect the main line. The main line, Matt repeated, reading the words upside down. That's what you are to them, Mariah. A branch. A side project. Noah is the trunk of the tree. This could be fake, Mariah stammered, though the nausea rising in her throat told her she believed it. It sounded exactly like the corporate pragmatism Nick tried to hide behind his cool dad persona. Is it? Matt stepped closer, invading her personal space, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Think back, Mariah. The cult, the kidnapping. When you were struggling, really struggling, did they drop everything? Did they burn the world down for you? Or did they send you to therapy and go back to work? He circled her, his voice weaving a web. But for Noah, for the golden boy, Victor fuels the jet. Nick breaks speed limits. Sharon forgets she even has another daughter. They left you here, alone, defenseless, with a killer on the loose. What does that tell you about your value? Mariah squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the tears. Stop it. I can make it stop, Nat said, his tone shifting. It was no longer taunting, it was offering. I can give you the one thing they never will. Control. Mariah opened her eyes. She looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding out a hand. What do you want? She asked, her voice trembling. I want what you want, Matt said smoothly. I want them to see us. I want them to realize that they can't just discard people like us. I have a plan, Mariah. A plan to take back the narrative. Noah is in a warehouse in LA, yes. But the real game is here. The real power is in Genoa City, left unguarded by two parents who are too blinded by favoritism to see the threat in their own living room. He leaned in, his eyes boring into hers. Imagine the look on Sharon's face when she realizes you were the one holding the cards. Imagine Nick realizing that the daughter he sidelined is the only one who can save his precious legacy or destroy it. You want me to help you? Hurt them? Mariah asked. No, Matt lied effortlessly. I want you to help me teach them. I want to level the playing field. If you align with me, we control the assets. We control the information. When they come back empty-handed, because they will, you won't be the girl waiting by the window. You'll be the one sitting in the big chair. You can protect the people you love, Mariah. But you have to be powerful enough to do it. Right now, you're just a victim waiting to happen. Mariah looked back at the trust document. The main line, the words burned. She thought of Tessa, of Arya, of how hard she had fought to build a life that felt valid. And yet, one crisis involving Noah, and she was invisible again. Matt saw the shift in her eyes, hardening of the hurt into something brittle and sharp. He pressed his advantage. They think I'm the villain, Nat whispered. But in their story, you're not even a character. You're a prop. Join me, and you become the author. The silence in the kitchen stretched, heavy and profound. Mariah's hand moved away from the phone. She looked at the door where her parents had exited without a backward glance. A dark, cold resolve settled over her features, masking the pain that still throbbed beneath. What do I have to do? She asked. Matt Clark smiled, a predator who had just secured his meal. First, he said, pulling a burner phone from his pocket and handing it to her, you're going to send a message. You're going to tell them everything is fine here. You're going to tell them you're handling it. Mariah took the phone. The plastic felt cold and heavy in her palm. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like power. She typed the message. All good here. Don't worry about me. Focus on Noah. She hit send. Good, Matt purred. Now, let's go to the main office. I believe you have the security codes. Mariah hesitated for only a second. She thought of the empty room, the silence, the jet soaring toward LA without her. She nodded. Yes, she said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. I have the codes. As she followed Nat Clark out of the kitchen and into the darkness of the hallway, Mariah Copeland didn't feel like a daughter anymore. She felt like something new, something dangerous. And for the first time all night, she didn't feel alone.